And now to today's special interview on the Daily Beat. Governor Mike Huckabee, who was a Republican presidential candidate until the Iowa caucus last February, joined us earlier for an in-depth talk. Huckabee is in Israel as a guest of the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem. We discussed the prospects of Israeli-U.S. relations, his take on military aid to Israel, and his favorite candidate for president. So will Huckabee surprise you in his choice? Let's watch. Governor Mike Huckabee, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Now, you're a frequent visitor to Israel and a big supporter of the Zionist cause. I'd like to ask you, what are your impressions from the direction Israel is heading now?
Well, Israel is in a very, very difficult spot. It's surrounded by enemies. It's the target of a lot of different ideologies, particularly the same kind of ideology that is attacking America right now. So America and Israel have a lot in common. We have common friends, but we have common enemies. And therefore, we have the common interest to protect ourselves against those enemies. I think it's very important that both Israel and the United States understand what we're up against and that we take this very seriously, whether it's the Iranian threat or whether it's ISIS. Basically, it comes down to radical Islam is a threat, not just to peace on a daily basis. It's a threat to our very existence. It's truly a threat to civilization itself.
Now, touching on that point, just yesterday the White House said it opposes boosting additional missile aid to Israel. What's your reaction to that?
You said they agreed that they would boost it?
They opposed boosting military aid.
I think it's a huge mistake for us not to recognize that strengthening the missile defense system of Israel is really strengthening a defense system for all the Middle East. It's strengthening a defense system for the rest of the civilization. So I don't understand the rationale behind that. And I hope that when Donald Trump is president, he will reverse that and to recognize the important strategic alliance that we have with Israel.
So it's fair to assume that you believe Donald Trump will be a better president for Israel than Hillary Clinton?
I absolutely believe that. I know Donald Trump fairly well, but I know Hillary Clinton very well. And I do think it would be in the best interest not only of the United States and Israel, but the best interest of the world to have a strong leader who has the capacity to bring back a level of respect to America, something we have lost over the past several years.
Well, just in recent weeks, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu met Russian President Vladimir Putin many times. What's your take on this rapprochement?
Well, I think it's always wise to talk to the people who are leaders of the world, even if they're people you don't necessarily agree with ideologically or philosophically. I don't see anything other than that being a very positive kind of relationship, not because I expect Putin to have some dramatic change of heart, but because I think Putin needs to understand that it is in Putin's best interest, it is in Russia's best interest for Israel to be strong. Because destabilization of Israel is destabilization of the Middle East, ultimately of Europe and the rest of the world.
Well, looking at the U.S. specifically and following the tragedy that struck Orlando, do you think there's anything the U.S. can learn from Israel's experience?
Well, one of the failures that we have now seen was that we had information on this guy. The FBI on 2 different occasions had interviewed him, and he was on the watch list. And for reasons that have not yet been explained, he was taken off the watch list. That enabled him to go and buy the weapons unchallenged. It also made it so that he was not being monitored more carefully, and the intelligence on him was lost. I think that was a breakdown in our system. So if we're going to be serious about dealing with radical Islam and the threats that it poses to us, we're going to have to take seriously when someone shows every sign of radicalization, whether it's in what they post on Facebook, what they say at work, where they go. Those are all red flags, and they should have been reviewed.
And lastly, Governor Huckabee, what would be your first tip to Prime Minister Netanyahu if Donald Trump is in fact elected President of the United States?
I would say to the Prime Minister, you'll have a new friend. it will be a different relationship that you've had perhaps for the past few years. And I think Donald Trump is very respectful of Israel and the relationship that our countries have, the necessity of our alliance, the recognition that the shared intelligence and the shared military strategy is critical, not only to the existence and future of Israel, but to the future of the United States as well. And I think it would be an excellent relationship.
Well, Governor Mike Huckabee, thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Beat.
Thank you.